Hi there, all my YouTubers out there. I am so excited about today's episode. So many of you reached out to me about how to do a podcast. Well, I've got a great guest on the show today to answer a lot of your questions. I hope you learned something. Okay. Well, hello there. Thank you for joining me today. I am Dr. Jen, and I'm so excited for you to join us today on this other Salisbury adventure topic. Many of you who've been with me from the start, I know that I started my life as a landlord in late 2022, and my first recording started January 2023. And here we are on episode 58. Oh my goodness. I've been approached by so many of you out there saying, "Hey, Jen, you started a podcast. How do I start one too?" So, who better to have a guest on my show than my podcast coach? So, welcome, Sydney Young. Welcome, Sydney, to the show.
Hey Jen. Oh my gosh, of course my voice. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna cut that out. Sarah, cut that out.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Hey Jen, I'm super excited to be here. I'm so honored to be on the show. I'm so excited to see, to be a part of everything that has, your growth over the last year, and I'm super excited to be here. So thank you.
Yay. Well, every time somebody approaches me that they've got a question about a podcast, all I do is I text you and I just send it to you and I go, here,
Yeah.
call Sydney. I don't know how to connect you other than to connect you to Sydney. And so let's just start at the beginning of all this. Who are you? What do you do? How on earth did you get into podcast coaching? Just walk us through it.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Sydney Young, and I'm a tech automation podcast business strategist. I do all the things that kind of fall under that umbrella. I started my business. What really got me into it was I started doing websites when I was like 12. I was really techie and into all the techie things, and then I started doing that. And then what happened is I had my son, and I was like, how can I work from home? So I started my online business. I started with website design, and then I still love the design piece, and then I pivoted a little bit more to the tech automation and coaching side, just because I'm super passionate about helping other people automate and streamline their business, and of course save time. So that's like my mission behind the scenes, is to make sure people can save time and have a well operational business.
Well, and to be clear, when we started this podcast and I approached you on it, I can make a website. I can design stuff and I can do all kinds of things. But if you remember what I said I'm going to do content in the recordings and you do everything else. So
Yeah, exactly.
you've done my website, you do all the transcripts, you do all the uploads, you make sure that the recordings are right, you do all of those things for me behind the scenes. And that plays right into your techie past. I like that. I think that's
Yeah.
pretty good. So let's just jump right into it. If somebody wants to start a podcast, what do they do besides call you?
Great question for sure. So I'd say the first thing that if anyone's looking to start a podcast, the first thing is to start by really nailing down your messaging. I think that's number one, figuring out who your target audience is before you even worry about the tech, as much as that's the, important part. But really need to know who is it that is going to be listening to this podcast, who's your target audience, and what are their problems, what are their pain points, and what are they looking to solve in their, business or whatever it is that you're going to be speaking about. Because at the end of the day, if you can't help them with a transformation or a little nugget, as Jen would say, there's no point in them listening, right? So really, it's how can you really provide value and give a transformation for that listener. So that's my first one, is messaging, really, really getting clear and like lots of clarity on that. The second thing is making sure you have systems in place, which is super important. So how are you going to record? What tools are you going to use? What's your schedule? Do you have a uploading schedule? Who's going to be editing it? Are you going to outsource that? Is that something that you're going to do yourself? What does that look like? Getting really clear on all the day-to-day operations, because then it's a lot easier to just wake up, prep your notes, be able to record, and then not worry about the rest if you hire out, or if you're doing it yourself, making sure that you do it in the easiest way so that you're not spending too much time than you need to, so you can focus on what you do best. And then third is start recording and and make sure that you use the proper tools and get a mic. That's something that I wouldn't say is like it's important, but it's not something that I would stress about. You know what I mean? If getting your first episode out there, sometimes it's just better to say it's done than worry about all the things. So, in the apps these days too, you can edit and you can organize everything so that it's super, that you can boost your sound. And there's a lot of editing techniques with AI even now that, make the sound a lot nicer. So don't let little things like that hold you back, is what I'm getting at.
So if somebody has an idea for a podcast and they say, "Hey, this is going to be my target audience," or these are the people I think are going to listen, kind of have a game plan on uploading and things like that, but don't let them I don't have a mic or anything, all those little bits.
Yeah.
Don't let that stop them, because I always say the same thing to everybody. Progress in any form is still progress. And so just record the first 10 on your phone. Don't let
Yeah,
that stop you.
exactly.
Just get
And our
started.
phones these days are great. We have awesome phones. They're crazy. They can do everything. So
And if you remember when we first started recording my first bits in early January 2023, I told you, I said I wanted to do minimal editing. I said it's
yeah,
warts and all. Let's
yeah,
just
yeah,
go. Let's just get some
exactly.
podcasts in and get some listeners started, and just there's no polishing on this yet. And then what we're doing, you're seeing, we're going exactly where people are asking questions, and we're having more guests and all of those things, and people can do that too. But I think the most intimidating thing is acknowledging that people want to actually do this. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
What do you see the hardest part of starting a podcast for people? What's the hardest thing?
Usually getting clarity on how to structure the episodes or how to, format the information. Like, so how am I actually going to deliver that nugget or that, transformational thing? Like, what is that going to be? So that's number one. Like, I think that really getting clarity on how you format them. Like, I like saying, if you can do three main talking points that you're going to, have an outline, be specific about that. I think the talking points can be a big one for people. And I think also that the tech is a hang up for people. They're like, well, I don't know how to do this, and how do I upload? And then they're going down the research rabbit hole, and then they're trying to find out, well, what do I do? And so then that becomes overwhelming. And then usually at that point, people are like, well, the tech usually actually is probably the number one thing that people are like, I'm hung up on. So I would say that's a huge part.
Yeah. Well, and you and I have talked about this as we've progressed through my podcast, and I know you've got others that you're assisting with. I had no idea that only 60% of podcasters are still recording after the first year. 40% fall off. That's a heck of an
Yeah.
attrition rate. But if they're
Yeah.
intimidated by the tech and why are so many people not finishing that first year and moving on beyond that? What do you
I
think?
think the biggest thing is that being a podcaster is a slower growth technique versus something like social media. So for example, if you were to go on Instagram, you could throw out a reel and it would get out there, and it would be, you could reach 1 million people in 24 hours if it goes viral, right? Like, there's ways that you can really boost yourself and you can get exposure quicker. But the problem with that is it's such a short, that post only lives for 24 hours, then it dies. Then you have to create more content, then you have to create more content. The key with podcasting is that it's just like blogging and long form content, is that with creating content that's longer, more transformational, and has more value, it's going to take more time up front, more recording time. It's going to take longer for it to get out there because you have to boost things like SEO. And if you don't know what SEO is, that's search engine optimization. So that's how you get found on Google. So for example, if you have a podcast and you're wanting to reach more people, SEO is something that's super important to get you out into the world so people can find you. That's like keywords and all that fun stuff. And yeah, and so I think that I think the biggest thing with the long-term strategy is that people don't have the patience and don't put the time in over a longer period is usually the issue. And then it's like, okay, well, SEO optimization can sometimes take up to 6 months for Google to fully crawl your website, to be able to, like, there's so many different, and it takes time to like have backlinks and all the things, right? To actually make it so that your any post that you put on your website will reach other people, and that's how you share your podcast. But the pro is that once you are found on this, you can be discovered for years to come, and your content is not outdated. where so somebody could search a keyword and your content would come up, and then you're not outdated 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Whereas if you search something like that, you're that viral Instagram reel would not come up if you were to search the keywords for that, because so much content's been made in between then that it's just essentially dead content, right? So that is the awesome thing about podcasting, is that long-term benefits way better, but it is harder, and a lot of people stop before they see the results overall.
They're impatient.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So I know you love your tech. I love that you love your tech tools. When we're launching a podcast, somebody's launching a podcast, what
Yeah.
tech tools do you recommend?
Yeah, for sure. So the first one is Podcastle. That's my favorite. You can record, you can edit, you can add your intro, your outro, you can add ads in there. You can do everything that comes to anything that you need to do to really create that episode to sound ready to go, ready to publish kind of thing. As far as, so there's two components when you're having a podcast, is where you're going to record that information, right? Like we actually sit down and record. It's like, well, where do I record that? So that's what Podcastle is. And when you record, that's where we start everything. That's where like the intro goes in. That's where we have, the core piece of content. And then from there, if you want to publish it, you need a hosting platform. So in order to actually publish so that you can go onto your phone and you see Apple Podcasts pop up and a new episode pop up, in order to do that, you need to be able to have a company that hosts your podcast. And so my top recommendation that actually we started with was Spotify. Well, it was called Anchor, and then they changed to Spotify for podcasters. So that's one. But then also the other one, Podcastle, just came out with it too. So either one are both going to be great, but they're going to help you so that you can actually reach your audience. So that's the first tech tool. The second one that I recommend would be Canva. I really like using that. That helps you so you can create some beautiful cover art and have branded elements throughout your website, so that your podcast looks on brand with your cover photo, right? So we don't want anything, we don't want a blank blank podcast art there. So that helps you stay on brand. And then website, Squarespace. I'm a Circle member for Squarespace, and I absolutely love using that. It's my top website host recommendation, because then you can share all of your podcast episodes onto your website, and then that's how you're going to get that long-term traction from the SEO and Google crawling your website to be able to find you. And that's those are my recommendations.
And let's be clear, my podcast uses all of those tools.
Yes.
It's just really incredible. In
Yeah.
fact, I know there's even some more tools that we use that you didn't know, which is fine. I mean,
Yeah.
my goodness, so you've got your two Audible ones, Podcastle and Spotify for podcasters, and then you've got your graphic aspect, which is Canva and Squarespace. Love it. So let's do this. Let's pivot a second. We've been talking up how to start a podcast kind of in a generic form now, but let's pivot into the podcast that the listeners are listening on. They're listening on My Life as a Landlord. And so you, as a techie person, automated person, for the landlords listening, how are some ways that the landlords listening can automate their rental business?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think the first one, this is exciting. I love this. Yeah, the first one, I think, and this is one that Jen does, and I think it's super awesome, is automating your rental application process. That's huge, right? Like, making it simple for people to be able to go online, fill out an application, submit it without having to like email them a PDF and then them print it and then send it back to you, right? And then also it gives you an easier way on the back end for you managing your business, right? So that you can actually store all those applicants, filter them, organize them by, qualifications and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's really a number one thing, which I'm super excited about, because Jen's going to be releasing something exciting coming up here, and with that we will have a downloadable or like an importable version of the application process that you can then use so that you can screen out tenants and figure that out. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome. I know you've got a couple other ideas here about using templates. I know that's going to be part of our aspect and our upcoming toolboxes.
Yeah.
And Automation is, especially if landlords are at scale, especially newbie landlords, if they're just getting, one, two, maybe up to five or even six rental units, there will be a critical mass number where they've got to do something that's more automated, especially if there's quite a bit of turnover, things like that. But business in general, I
Mhm.
love it when you and I don't talk about the podcast. We're talking about business and automating our business. I think that's
Yeah.
really, really neat. Um, I I really appreciate that about you, is that yeah, you're my podcast coach, but you're also my business coach, which is I think the real hat that you wear for people, which is really cool. Um, One quick question though, if a listener is trying to, if they want to get a hold of you, how do they get a
Yeah.
hold of you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is creativebliss.co. And on my website, I have information on booking a consult, so you can check it out. I also have lots of templates that I'm in the works on creating that will help, just in general, business owners with streamlining email templates and things like just different tools that I'm very passionate about using that you will be able to, can download templates from. So definitely head over to my website and check it out. I'm super excited about that. And yeah, I'd love to connect with you.
Excellent. What else did we not cover today in our podcast all about starting a podcast?
Um, let's see. I think the biggest thing is just if it's something that you're excited about doing and you feel like you have a message you want to share with the world, I think the biggest thing is just saying go for it and then see what happens.
Just jump in. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, that's perfect with your call, with a call to action. Sydney, I know you and of course my listeners know that I usually do 3 points to ponder and then a call to action. That's my structure for my episodes. But when I have a
Yeah.
guest on, it's a little bit different, but I still do a call to action. And here's my call to action, all you listeners out there. If you were going to start a podcast today, what would it be about? Think about it. Your podcast could be literally about anything. It could be about a TV show, a hobby, your industry, anything that you're passionate about, even a talk show, a podcast about nothing. Could be about nothing. It could be about two
Yeah.
people having coffee. So that's your
Yeah.
call to action. If you were going to start a podcast on, what would that be? So answer that for yourself. You can also shoot me an email, my learn at mylifeasalandlord.com. Thank you so much, Sydney, for being on the show with me today.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so honored. Thank you so much. And I'm so honored to be able to partner with you in your endeavor here. And I'm so excited to see everything that comes from it.
Thanks, Sydney. I super
Yeah.
appreciate it. As we conclude today, comments and questions, all you listeners out there, as you know, that creates the next podcast, and we create resources about what you're requesting. If you know of a really great guest that I should have on the show, there's also a podcast guest application that Sydney has automated for me on my website. I'm always looking for a dynamic guest to bring value to all of you. Also, don't forget the resources on the website, including other ways to invest in your continuing landlord education. And don't forget the free blackout bingo cards that are sitting there waiting for you. Check out mylifeasalandlord.com for details. Next week, I have an awesome guest for episode 59. I'm interviewing the managing attorney for the Legal Aid Society of Hawaii, who is going to answer all questions about housing and tenancy in the state of Hawaii. I will see you there. Okay, hang on a second. Let me stop the recording.